Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be telling you about a recent documentary that came out about the life of Roger Ebert. He's well known for his Chicago Sun-Times reviews, movie reviews for the Chicago Sun-Times paper, and he's also famous for the Siskel and Ebert show and the Ebert and Roeper show back when those were on TV. And throughout the course of this documentary, we get to see um, the career of Roger Ebert. We get to see kind of how his movie reviews have influenced a lot of people, kind of how a lot of critics competed with him, his time at the hospital during the last days of his life. So almost anything you can imagine about Roger Ebert, his view on film criticism and his getting the star, his Hollywood walk of fame star, in the Hollywood, California area. All those things are covered in this film. Kind of how he met his wife and stuff like that. Also, for those who read the book Life Itself, which is also the name of this movie, a lot of the material covered in that book is also covered in this film, and a lot of the photos and a lot of the quotes that were used in that book are also used in this film at appropriate times also. So I really enjoy Life Itself, you guys. I'm a huge fan of Roger Ebert. He is a huge inspiration to me. He definitely was one of the many people that kind of convinced me to start this whole movie review thing. I watched a ton of Siskel and Ebert stuff before making this YouTube channel and Facebook videos and all that kind of stuff. And he definitely was definitely one of the many people that made me think more on a critical level on film before I really knew how to judge a film and things like that. Back in the earlier days where I would just watch a film to be entertained and things like that. But now I have a bigger perspective and a bigger expectation when it comes to certain films now and stuff like that. So for the positives and negatives of Life Itself, since I did really enjoy this documentary quite a lot, the film is very passionate about both Roger Ebert and it has a huge passion of films. I love that about this film. It really showed, the successes and the failures and the rise and the fall of Roger Ebert, and kind of how there was dips in his career, there was highlights in his career, there were things that got people more comfortable around him. He had a drinking problem at one point that he had to overcome. He losing his ability to speak definitely impacted how the rest of his career would turn out until his death. He got more into the blogging environment. He basically emphasized his written movie reviews more so than he ever did before that. Um, there was a lot of time. The film also talked about kind of how when he was really sick, when he lost his ability to speak, where he lost the lower part of his jaw due to cancer. Kind of how he always had to update his site, being I'm going to take this leave of presence, and he never really called it a leave of absence. He just called it a leave of presence, more so because maybe there was something that went wrong or something that maybe he was too tired from a recent operation or things like that. So the film really got into detail, and we actually see video footage of Roger Ebert when he was in the hospital during this basically the last days of his life, and they really show a lot of footage. Like they show a little bit of his wedding video, and they showed him and Gene Siskel behind the scenes and things like that. So this documentary is very passionate about both Roger Ebert and just passion for films and kind of what it means to us, how Roger Ebert really feels that, what film does to our society in a good way and things like that. Several guest appearances are in this documentary as well. We get Martin Scorsese, we get Werner Herzog, Errol Morris, Chaz Ebert herself, Roger Ebert's wife. We get Gene Siskel's wife in this at one point. Just tons of guest appearances that have a huge impact on Roger Ebert's life in some way back when he was around. And people who still kind of keep Roger Ebert's spirit alive to this day. Even some film critics who are still reviewing movies on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic and things like that. A lot of them have guest appearances in this too. The film also shares some information on Roger Ebert that I wasn't even aware of before watching this documentary. I didn't even know that Roger Ebert did very small TV show before the Siskel and Ebert show. I had no idea that, and I think the reason why is because they even covered it in the documentary. He wasn't a very good TV presence at first. He really had to learn how to become a good TV presence. They talked about how, like Gene Siskel his way into television was a much easier transition for Gene than it was for Roger. Roger was used to writing stuff. He was used to getting really descriptive with things, and when he was on TV, he had to learn how to shorten stuff. He had to learn how to fit content within a smaller time frame than what a movie review would allow on a website or in a magazine or in a newspaper. So just a lot of stuff about Roger Ebert and his life that I was not aware of before. Obviously, the stuff I just covered a second ago is just one of the many things that was covered in this. There's a lot more information in here. And a lot of people probably aren't going to even be aware of his alcoholism. I was aware of it because I read the Life Itself book before seeing the documentary. But there's a lot of really unique and really well done, information gathering about Roger Ebert that you might not be aware of before watching the documentary. I briefly did cover this compliment, but the film does contain rare Roger Ebert video footage. We do see maybe some you do see some personal family stuff that he did, like when he was on vacations and when he was with his step grandchildren, when he was with his stepchildren, and when he was at the Cannes Film Festival event, they talked about how he was one of the few U.S. film critics that got to go over to the Cannes Film Festival, film most of it. He got to do interviews, he got to review stuff while over there, and even critics who did go over there, they didn't review the Cannes Film Festival material until they got home to the U.S. But Roger found ways to review it there. So by the time he got to the U.S., he didn't have to, worry about rushing over to doing that review because he got it done overseas already. The film also gets very deep and emotional. There's two scenes, and these really aren't spoilers because a lot of people were aware of how sick Roger Ebert was and the fact that he passed away before this film even got finished. But there's scenes where, we get to see him, kind of how he ate and drank when he lost his lower jaw. It's a very difficult scene to watch, to tell you the truth. You can definitely tell he doesn't like it when he didn't like the way he had to eat and drink after he lost his jaw. You can tell it was very irritating for him. It was also very irritating for him where he had to learn how to walk again after losing the jaw and going after, going through all those operations and things like that. There's a lot of really deep and emotional stuff here, and there's also some scenes involving Chaz Ebert breaking down on TV over Roger's condition. You can definitely tell this is a very difficult time for her. And even during, when they filmed stuff after his death, you can still tell there was a lot of stuff that really got to her after a while. For the negatives of Life Itself, there really isn't a lot because, once again, I really love this documentary a lot. But the film does occasionally get off topic. There's definitely some points in the film where just okay, I didn't know that. I didn't really. It doesn't really. There was even some parts that really didn't even relate to Roger that much. Even it was very occasional. It was more so near the first half of the film. But there was just some occasional parts that's okay, I don't need to know that. Go on to the next big topic of the film and things like that. So it gets a little bit off topic sometimes. So it gets a little bit irritating when the film occasionally does that. Another thing that occasionally bothered me in Life Itself was there was some unfitting jazz music at times. It was really unfitting around the point of the film where, Roger was dead and, people are, thinking back of how Roger impacted their lives and things like that. Yeah, we see rare video footage of a little bit of his funeral and things like that. They were playing really high energy jazz music on certain scenes like that, and it just really didn't fit. I felt very unfitting when they were playing that kind of music on those really sad moments, because in the first half of the film, when Roger's talking about how film impacts society, very good music was played during that. A lot of really good music was even played during the first half of the movie. It was more towards the second half where it just that uplifting jazz music just really doesn't fit this really depressing stuff that they had to cover toward the end of the documentary. But just a little minor nitpick I had. Overall, guys, I give Life Itself a 9 out of 10. It's a terrific documentary. If you love Roger Ebert, if you love movies, if you love film criticism, if you love the way Roger Ebert reviewed films, and if you want to see more information on Roger Ebert that you might not hear on the internet somewhere, Life itself is very much worth checking out. I loved it. Once again, 9 out of 10. Very, very well done documentary. One of the better documentaries I've seen in a long time. So make sure you see Life itself. It's a very terrific documentary.